One day, as we patrol the Deep Beta Quadrant, well beyond the Romulan territory, Captain Nicholas Martin contacts us with a report we may find interesting. An Undine vessel, the same ship we encountered at Omicron Kappa 2, has been sighted near NGC 4447. NGC 4447 is a star system that was only surveyed in 2404, 5 years ago by the USS Archer. The system lacks a name as it has little of interest, and the space is saturated with delta radiation, the same type of radiation that can cause crippling and irreversible damage to most organic life. There are also numerous Borg signatures, so we are advised to investigate with caution. As we arrive in the system, we detect traces of a bioship and a single Borg sphere. There is only a residue of liquid left floating in the vacuum like egg yolk, likely the blood of species 8472's organic vessel. Readings strongly indicate that this sphere is the same ship that we encountered from Omicron Kappa 2 and overran our research base. Opening fire on the sphere, our goal is to deny the Borg their Undine captive that they took from our last mission, to prevent them from obtaining any further knowledge that they may glean from it. Unfortunately, we don't have time to mount a rescue operation. Engaging the sphere, we're able to take it out before it deals us too much damage, though we have to repair and restore ourselves before we press on, as reinforcements are detected on our scans. Repair teams quickly have the Armiger in working order, and we press on to meet our guests. The sun of this system sits obscured by interstellar dust, and the light that filters through is green-hued, a universe mirroring the palette of the Borg in some cosmically cynical attempt to add to this uneasy sense of atmosphere. The reinforcements show themselves as a single Borg cube, easily a match for the Armiger, so we ready ourselves for prolonged combat. A heated exchange of energy flies between the two vessels, and both lose shielding. Although the Armiger comes off a little worse in the brief exchange, the cube lets loose a single plasma torpedo, then begins to accelerate away from us. This is irregular. The Borg are a highly ordered collective, always weighing the gain against the cost in everything they do. If they've withdrawn from combat so readily, then either they're not prepared to risk damage or loss of this cube, or don't even want to spend the time it would take to fight us. That or new directives were given that changed the cube's priorities. Or it could be luring us into a trap. As we pursue our quarry, we pass by more Borg spheres uninterested in our presence, all heading in the same direction. Their black shells hard to distinguish from the debris of this system if it wasn't for their very directed movement. We soon see what has the Borg so rattled. Disruptor fire passes between two forces as the Borg vessels engage species 8472 in combat. Tarsi points out numerous ruptures into fluidic space, the home dimension of species 8472. The Borg once attempted to invade this realm, but were forced out by the inhabitants that they could not assimilate. She summarises that the only reason the Borg would make a new push against the Undine, as they seem to be doing, is that they have somehow adapted. We draw close to one of these ruptures into the foreign realm and witness several spheres pass into the aperture, vanishing into fluidic space. Not good. The Borg always weigh the gain against the cost, and if they're doing this, then they really do think that they can overpower the Undine. And the Undine can destroy planets. We set about engaging the leftover forces from their skirmish, several spheres and some bioships. Fortunately, there's not enough bioships here to link their bioplasma weapons. Doing so would allow them to bring to bear firepower enough to utterly destroy everything before them. I'm going to put the level playing field down to the fact that these ships have already been fighting the Borg forces and are somewhat weakened. In reality, it's the game underpowering the Undine to make it a fair fight. The bioships are one of the few unique vessels of Star Trek in that they are organic rather than technological in origin. It may be fair to suggest that they are in fact grown, not built, but we honestly don't know. The Undine, above all, wish to be left alone and tolerate no intrusions into their realm, being readily xenophobic, so most of what Starfleet has been able to gather is laden with a fair amount of speculation. What is known is that their ships possess similar DNA as Species 8472 themselves, and fire anti-proton beams, which annihilate matter on contact. Fun fact, the name for these small ships is the Nikor bioship, and the term comes from the old Germanic word for a water spirit. The larger Dramius vessels are probably named after Dramia, basically crabs. Less imposing, but it continues with the nautical theme, and several species of Dramia use camouflage to hide themselves amongst their environments, so maybe there's a parallel there too. After the battle, Tarsi detects a Borg cube re-emerging from fluidic space with a crippled Undine ship in tow. It's being pursued by more Nikor bioships, so we'll have to play this one carefully. Our readings show that the Borg have beamed aboard Undine from their captive prize, and we don't have to wait too long for their skirmish to come to an end. Debris from the destroyed bioships floats from the cube as we close in, and Tarsi suggests that whatever reason the Borg have for capturing the Undine, we need to throw a wrench into their plans. The likelihood is that they are working on a way to assimilate the species, and if this is the case it could spell disaster for the Undine and the Federation. Tarsi sets about ordering teams to reconfigure our arrays to isolate the cube from the collective. It will only be temporary, but if they do make a breakthrough, then they won't be able to share it with the greater collective, and it gives us a window to close this operation down. We beam aboard the damaged cube in its regenerative state. So far so good. The Borg are prioritising getting their ship operational again over our intrusion. Under different circumstances I'd be offended at being such a low priority. Yeah, well, still, if we don't directly interfere, we will likely be ignored. Temet can detect Undine life signs from somewhere deeper into the cube, but interference is causing some trouble getting an exact fix. This is probably why we couldn't just beam them out. Several drones are running to and from the alcoves to interfaces to enact repairs, and we shall give them a wide berth. I can't begin to guess at the nature of all of this equipment. Borg vessels don't adhere to a standard starship layout. Even among different species, a bridge can usually be located, engineering, astrometrics and so on. But inside a cube, few of those design principles apply. Sure, they have nodes where data collates and is processed, but there's no command centre. All the drones here run the vessel in unison, their minds linked together at all times, meaning there is no central command. Likewise, there must be a warp core, of sorts, but the rest of the workings have no reason to be located in a single place. We enter into a cavernous chamber of geometric shapes and a dull haze. The dizzying heights and empty space are something no Starfleet vessel should have, and we could spend weeks exploring this strange architecture. It's like the inside of a computer, but we'll have to get a handle on our curiosity. This isn't the time. With its systems so spread out and with so many redundancies, a Borg cube can operate even if only 22% of its mass survives, presumably after some intense regeneration though. Temet offers to modify our tricorders to interface with the Borg ship's network, but reminds us that doing so may bump us up in the Borg's priority list, meaning they might come after us. We locate a data node, an archive of information, and set about trying to attain some useful data. We succeed in confirming our fears. The Borg are attempting to assimilate the Undine, and our intrusion has alerted the local drones. They step out of their alcoves and begin to amble towards us, and after several shots from our weapons, they adapt to its frequency, and we have to resort to melee combat to finish them off before getting a chance to remodulate. There are 2 more nodes we can access. The second one reveals that the Borg have established a beachhead in fluidic space, prompting the rise in hostilities from species 8472. This seems to be the new Borg modus operandi, as they've done the same thing to Starfleet space with the Vega colony. The last one contains the method of travel the Borg have been using to breach into fluidic space, generating a special singularity that somehow acts as a gateway. This is useful information that Starfleet would likely find very valuable. Perhaps we can use it to establish our own ties with the Undine. But we'll have to get out of here first, and that means lowering the force field around this room. We follow the Undine life signs, but Temet is concerned by how they aren't clearing up. They're strange and don't match the limited data that we have on them. I have a bad feeling about this. Stepping into the new chamber, apparently our intrusions have indeed irritated the Borg enough that they attempt to stop us. 5 drones approach and open fire, and it's likely we're going to encounter more resistance the deeper we go. But against us, resistance is futile. It's a good idea to remodulate our weapons at every available opportunity, such as between firefights, and that way we won't have to do it in the middle of a critical situation. Sure enough, every time we approach a bank of alcoves, some of the drones activate to dissuade us. This leads to a horrid situation where we cannot tell which drones are going to spring into life and which are remaining in their regenerative state, helping to restore the vessel. So we've got to treat everyone as hostile, leaving them at our backs as we press on. The Borg have overwhelming numbers as their advantage, so any sense of security we'd get at clearing them all out is a sham, but it'd make me feel better. Tactically speaking, we'll have to keep moving. We can't forget that while most of the Borg are immobile, they are far from idle. Not too much time later, we find an Undine secured to a wall with several drones standing over it. Temet speculates that this is a failed or partially assimilated subject, so we move in for a closer look. Our firefight disrupts the data node next to the Undine and it slumps to the floor, dead. Temet believes it killed itself, and who can say? There are clear signs of Borg technology grafted to it, but clearly it wasn't part of the collective, so hopefully the Borg still have some way to go before they fully assimilate species 8472. Still, this is more progress than they've made against them previously. Descending into a new chamber, strange flasks line the room with specimens in them. We'll investigate in a minute as we need to secure the area first. There are several drones scattered around this lab, and we take them all out so we can investigate undisturbed. As before, any Undine we find are already dead or dying. Each of these tubes is filled with a liquid and eerily suspended, and each one is a dismembered portion of an Undine. Many have prosthetics of Borg design attached, a torso here, a set of limbs with artificial sockets, a severed head with a replaced eye. The glowing lights suggest that the cybernetics are operational. Let's just hope the organic components aren't. Beyond the dozen or so we passed, there are racks of specimens lining the walls of the room, and who knows how many more lying beyond the bulkheads. This butchery of a species has all been so that the Borg can better understand species 8472 and learn to adapt. In the centre of the room we can see 2 corpses in the process of being carved up for investigation. Clearly the Borg are trying different methods to get their assimilation to stick before storing their results for analysis, all very clinical. Let's get out of this nightmare and find a way to shut it all down. We've already learned a lot from this investigation, and currently the Borg have been prevented from contacting the collective, but time is running short. Any breakthrough that they've made in assimilating species 8472 is theoretically contained to this one cube, but it won't be unless we complete our mission. Following the trail, we finally stumble upon the last Undine biosign. Okay, so bad news. It looks like the Borg have had at least one successful assimilation, as we are confronted with a fully converted Undine. The good news is that this must be a recent development, as there's no doubt there'd be many others by now if the Borg could do this already, which means that this is the only cube that has the required knowledge to create this abomination. This battle is about as tough as you'd expect an assimilated member of Species 8472 to be. It's a tanky SOB with a lot of health and powerful abilities. Normal Borg can temporarily assimilate a member of your away team, as has happened here, and this leads you to attacking your own comrades until you recover. Normally, you can take the Borg down before they reach you, but this boss's large health pool means that it can close the distance and weather the hits easily. Couple this with a wide array of psychic and physical attacks, and it's not uncommon to find yourself making several attempts at this fight. One thing that can be used to your advantage is that it will pursue you throughout a large area of the cube, so you have plenty of room to fall back and keep firing. Setting up fabricated shields, mortars, mines and the like, as well as using explosives, helps to deal damage, but you'll likely find yourself trying to stay mobile. Honestly, you'll want to try to keep it still, where your AoEs and sustained fire can pin it down, but it really doesn't want to cooperate. On top of all of this, it can heal itself occasionally, and being Borg, it adapts to prolonged weapons fire. During the firefight, we seem to have it contained, but suddenly it breaks out after Hale, swatting him back and moving away from the rest of the team. Coinciding with it adapting to Hale's fire, the fight that seemed in the bag gets drawn out. Finally, we manage to take it down, but not before it leaves a parting gift. It infects my captain, and the crew are forced to subdue Hale in order to remove the nanites. Well, alright guys. Jeez. Could have done it without the explosives, Tarsi, just saying. That was the most difficult ground fight to date, I think, mostly as controlling the situation is key to driving it back, as well as responding in time to the debuffs, something that I evidently fail at. We approached the vinculum, a connection between the data nodes, where the assimilated Undine was activated. This device is likely the central link to the collective, judging by its name, and destroying it is another step in keeping this cube's successes from the hive mind. In response to our actions, the cube cuts short its repair and begins to awaken in full. Scaverin contacts us from the Armiger and suggests that we beam out before it raises its shields. Back in space, Tarsi is able to confirm that we have successfully contained the information for now, but with the cube rapidly powering up, we'll need to scorch the ground to prevent it from ever being recovered. That went up pretty quickly. I think we may have had help from those Undine ships that just arrived, and I doubt that the Undine will want to talk to us. So let's quickly set a course away from them and the broken debris of this cube to make our escape. Besides, we have our own findings to report to Starfleet. Calling into command, we relay our findings from aboard the cube, including the knowledge on how to enter fluidic space, and the catastrophic developments we prevented from spreading. Our reward is a piece of Borg tech, either tactical, medical or engineering, that I like to imagine is a souvenir from our experiences, and we set a course for our new mission. This was a close call of an operation. The Borg are being harried by the Undine as they've continued to research the species in hopes of adding their distinctiveness to the collective. It would have been naive, I guess, to assume that the Borg would have been idle in the last decades since they encountered 8472. But that doesn't explain in full why the Undine are hostile to us, unless they really don't see any difference in our galaxy's life forms. The lab where the Borg were cutting up the aliens in such an emotionless and clinical fashion was disturbing and a reminder of what the Borg are. They're not a power that can be negotiated with, not to be reconciled with, but to be stopped entirely. The Borg cube we encountered was on the cusp of learning how to assimilate the Undine, and we were able to isolate that information and destroy it before it made its way back to the greater hive mind. But the Borg won't just stop there. This is just a setback for them, and a tactic to buy time for us. The Borg have established a foothold in fluidic space, and that is where they are securing their Undine from. So I think it's about time we went in after them. But that will have to be for another episode as we continue our adventures with the crew of the USS Armiger in the growing narrative of Star Trek Online. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.